In Asuka's test case 2, the number of spells that he has in it have changed ever so slightly. There is one less Howling Metron, which is the slow blue fireball that he shoots. And there is one more of the Aquila Metron in there now. This is namely because Aquila Metron has been reworked in this patch, which we'll talk about once we get to it in the patch notes themselves. But basically what you should know about Test Case 2 is that he now only has one of the Howling Metrons and two of the Aquila Metrons now. Recover Mana Instant now recovers more mana than previously. This was practically useless in the old patch after its nerfs, but now it's actually pretty feasible looking. I started at 10% of Asuka's mana, and we get to almost 50%, so it seems like a jump of about around 35-40%, which is really nice. Additionally, Low Pass Filter Gravity has an adjustment to the blowback of any magic spells that you hit. Previously, the opponent would kind of be staying in place on the ground, and you'd be, maybe hard caught at some instances to try and pick up a combo from this one, just because they didn't really give you an advantage for using this filter if you hit the opponent with some of your spells. But now there's a ground bounce effect that occurs on the opponent, as you can see here. Everything else kind of still functions as it did before in the previous patch, but when you get up close to him and you hit someone with it, you now get a ground bounce with ample time to extend and add some normals or to juggle more spell rotations or mana regeneration in this now. A nice buff to this filter. Aquila Metron has been reworked. Previously, this was a DP that Asuka had. It was only available in test cases 1 and 2 as a one-off thing, meaning it was a little bit sporadic for him to have, and once he did have it, the opponent simply had to look out for him DPing until he didn't have it. Now, it is no longer a DP, but instead has some cool new utility as the properties on hit have been changed to now freeze the opponent in place, giving Asuka a lot of frame advantage. Now, there's some things that Asuka can do with this. He can regenerate a little bit of mana and then cancel out of that to fire another spell or combo into the next normal. He can also use this in the middle of his combos to restand the opponent, then dash up and get some extensions, though you will note that the combo utility does seem a little bit limited, as once you launch the opponent, they're instantly brought back down. So this pretty much cranks up the gravity scaling up to maximum, I think. There is some uses for this, though, as an air-to-air to bring the opponent onto the ground, since you can use it for that purpose. And I think that this is probably going to find its uses as a bit of a restand mix-up tool for Asuka to use. That's very rudimentary demonstration, but just to give you an idea of what could be in the future for Asuka. The final change to him is Bookmark Full Order, where the mana depletion during the time stop has been reduced. Previously, you could get to almost completely burned out on mana, so if you took a little bit of time to shuffle through your spells, you could be burning through valuable mana. Now, it is dramatically slower. It does accelerate a little bit as you get along, I think, but you barely get over just 50% of total mana spent during the super, which again will help Asuka conserve his mana. Asuka has always been a character that I found really cool to see in Guilty Gear Strive. He's a very complex character that requires a player to adapt on the fly for what special moves and what slots that he has in order to then execute and bring the vision to life. He was quite strong in a lot of ways some patches ago, just because the projectiles, the Metrons, were very hard to deal with for a lot of characters, and you could kind of just be stuck in a bullet hell in a fighting game. And now that Arc System Works has introduced quite a bit of counterplay to those spells, where it's a lot easier to 6p them or even jab them out of existence so that his zoning game is a little bit weaker. They also did other nerfs to him, such as, gutting some of his mana regeneration sources, like instant mana recovery, for example, was pretty much a useless spell, and if Asuka doesn't have his mana, then the character doesn't really function. Previously, it was very easy to get him burnt out of his mana, thus making him the squishiest character in the game with the least effective health, and to snowball your victory from there. I like the changes overall because it allows Asuka to, again, kind of be a hyper spell dispenser, while also reworking Aquila Metron to being this situational DP that, honestly, I feel like kind of hurt Asuka in more situations than it did help him, and now it gives him even more utility that I think will play into his overall playstyle. So instead of having situational defensive tools, instead his defense is going to be consistent, and now he can have even crazier things to do on offense if he's playing around with that test case 1 and that test case 2, making them a little more interesting to gravitate towards, other than just like the test case 3 that we'd usually see him use. I'm pretty happy about these changes. I do think he enjoys pretty much all of the system mechanic changes. His blue-wild assault is largely untouched, as well as the fact that he would love to YRC pretty much anyone who's spamming guard crush pressure against him in those situations. And he's going to be having more mana overall in a lot of these interactions so that he can keep playing to that game style that he wants to have. I personally would love to see a return of Asuka, especially now that there is quite a bit of counterplay to his zoning, but we'll see if that is enough to actually hold him back and to make people, forget about him. But considering how many nerfs have been directed towards top tier characters, I think that there might be a chance for Asuka to, go on a little bit of a playing spree for some of the top level players that, dropped him in the past. Maybe they'll return and mess around with him. I miss seeing him in competitive play. I think he's a cool character. I think the ways he was strong before weren't that healthy, but maybe he's at a point where he could just be cool to see.